This is directly from the Missing 411, which is a series of books by a guy by the name of Dave Paulides, who's a very interesting dude.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who don't know what the Missing 411 is, look it up. It's amazing and fascinating. And the Missing 411 in concept is basically... Dave Paulides was a former detective, I believe. He is a former investigator. And he became fascinated by all these stories of people going missing in the woods. And he soon discovered that a lot of these cases go unsolved. Most of them actually go unsolved. And that he was more fascinated by the fact that the State Department and the Parks Departments never keep records of them.
Yeah.
That's what he found fascinating. And it started this huge, for lack of a better term, it's literally a rabbit hole of him discovering all of these stories of people vanishing under very mysterious circumstances. I have my issues with this series, which I plan on getting into later, but there are several stories in there that I find fascinating. And this is one of them. This is one of them. This is the case of Jackie Copeland. This is from 1950.
Okay,
so this is an old one.
Yeah.
So Jackie Copeland is a 2-year-old boy. He's a 2-year-old boy who vanished in the middle of this park full of not only other children, but a lot of other adults, particularly a lot of parents. Vanished. The father looked away from him for 2 seconds, turned back, gone. So no one saw this boy go missing. No one saw him go missing. And that isn't surprising, because a lot of these stories have that. No one sees, they turn their backs for a second, and suddenly the person is gone. So, of course, panic ensues, as would happen to a parent, where suddenly their kid is missing. So everyone is looking for Jackie. All the parents are getting together and looking for Jackie. And it gets to the point that they bring in the police, because they can't find him anywhere.
Yeah.
So the police come in, the first thing they bring are dogs, which is very common when searching for people. Is you bring in the dogs.
Yeah, give him a scent and then try him.
And so the dogs are out searching. They're not really picking anything up. What's interesting is that the police do not assume abduction. Now, in hindsight, this makes sense. Because
from what you described too.
Well, it's not just that. Sorry, I gotta adjust my camera a bit. There we go. So, the reason why it makes sense why they didn't go towards abduction first is not because of anything that I just said. It's actually because of the time period this is in. This is the 1950s.
Okay.
Abduction cases are not what they are today. Back then. Today, a police officer would say abduction immediately.
Yeah.
Back then, not so much.
Yeah, I get what you're saying now. Okay.
So they just assumed the kid just walked into the woods. The kid just walked off into the woods and got lost. But that's all they think. They just think he's lost in the woods. So luckily, he's just 2 years old. Remember, this kid is 2 years old.
Yeah, he's very young.
So he doesn't have really anywhere to go. And I'll tell you why. Because this area is nothing but swamp. Deep, thick swamp. Did you just burp?
No, that was me reacting to it, actually.
Oh, okay. I thought that was a burp because it looked like you were trying to stifle a laugh, and I was like, did you just burp?
No, I was just like, because that to me is like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And that's what the police are thinking, too. What you're thinking, what the police are thinking.
Yeah.
And that's why they were like, oh, he couldn't have gone too far.
Yeah, kid got caught in like a bog or something and couldn't get out.
But, like, you look at this area, and it's nothing but bogs and thick underbrush, and it's awful. It's nasty out there. And they fail to find Jackie. The dogs fail to pick up a scent, or they do, and then it just vanishes. And so they spend all night out there looking for Jackie.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, I think it's a couple of days later, these people who knew of what was going on, they were by what they called an oil repurposing plant.
Oh no.
And this is no. You're fine.
Okay.
Nothing crazy happens there.
Oh thank God. Like.
This doesn't have a bad ending. It doesn't.
Oh, okay.
I'll say that right now.
Okay.
These people, right? You see, there's a reason why I picked the story, Lucas, and it'll become clear in a little bit.
Oh yeah, no. Keep going.
These people are way outside of the search zone, and I mean they described it as 2 to 4 miles away from where the police were searching for Jackie, because they were still searching.
Okay.
Now these people, one of them happened to look over his shoulder, and what he says is he thought he saw a little kid peeking his head around the corner of a tree.
Oh.
And so they go over, and sure enough, it's Jackie.
Oh.
Now, here's the thing. It wasn't like he was hiding in this plant. He was on what looks basically as an island in the middle of this bog. Again, 4 miles away
Yeah.
from, and 2 years old.
Yeah.
4 miles away from where he went missing, from where he disappeared. And essentially, he's in good shape. I mean, he's dehydrated, he's hungry, and he's a bit emaciated because he's just spent 3 or 4 days out there.
Yeah.
But he's okay.
That's good.
You know,
Yeah.
and he's okay. But almost immediately, the people that find him, it dawns on them, like, it's almost impossible for them as adults to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
How the hell did a 2-year-old get out there?
Yeah.
And that daunts the police as well. This daunts the police to no end. So immediately questions begin to pop up. You know, there's a bajillion questions running through all these people's heads. How the hell did Jackie, the biggest one being what I just said, how the fuck did Jackie get all the way out there when adults have a hard enough time getting all the way out there?
Like a 2-year-old. How did he make it out there? Like,
now, this next bit is a bit tricky because he's 2 years old. And if you know how 2-year-olds speak, they speak a lot of gibberish.
Yeah. Yeah.
But certain things came up in what this kid was saying that raised red flags.
Uh-huh.
Not just for me, but for the police and just about everybody. And it's the fact that when they'd ask him the questions, he never really deviated from using the same vocabulary.
Oh.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Jackie mentions that he saw someone in the woods peering at him from around a tree. And he felt that this thing wanted him to come into the forest with him. So Jackie starts going into the woods. But according to Jackie, I guess, and again, I'm not a fan of the way how Dave Paulides kind of writes this, Jackie apparently felt the need to keep going because this thing kept getting further and further and further away, but it kept looking over its shoulder at him or turning around to look at him. And just kept getting further and further away, and Jackie kept wanting to get closer to it because he was, I guess, curious about it.
Yeah.
He describes it. This is it. Jackie says eventually he reached this place called the Awful Dark. He used the term the Awful Dark.
Okay.
So my guess is it's nighttime.
Yeah, I think it might be too.
I think that's what he's talking to. But he says there were all these creatures around him, but they couldn't get to him because the giant was next to him.
What the hell?
Yeah. 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 So the police don't know what to make of that, but nevertheless, they are fixated on the distance that this boy traveled. And they come to the conclusion that the only way this boy could have gotten to where these people at the oil repurposing plant found him was if he had help. And Jackie says it was the giant.
That is crazy.
So what's interesting is that Jackie, when found, he was peering around a tree. He was mimicking what he
Yeah,
saw.
yeah.
Which to me, when I first read that, I said he's mimicking it, and he says that's what the thing was doing. To me, that actually raised a red flag. Because
Hmm.
to me, what a 2-year-old will do, this is kind of what I remember doing when I was really little, is they will come up with scenarios in their heads,
Yeah,
act it out, and say
yeah,
this is what happened.
yeah.
They use their imagination
But
essentially.
also too, I feel like a young child like that would do something like that too,
Sure.
especially if he was as enthralled as he was about this giant, like just experiencing this.
Well, we
I
don't
feel
know.
like
We don't know if the thing peering around the tree that got him into the woods was the giant or not.
my bad, my bad.
We
Yeah,
don't. I want to clarify that right now because again, he's a fucking 2-year-old kid.
yeah, my bad.
Um,
But
it
thing he's
could
still
be.
in. Yeah,
It's in
he's
Dave Paulides inferences that it is, but
yeah,
to me, there's just no proof to say that it's the same thing because
yeah,
he's a 2-year-old kid.
yeah,
Um, but anyways, but what Dave Paulides said adds a lot of credibility to this is the fact that Jackie was asked by multiple different people at multiple different times what happened, and he told the same story.
yeah.
He
Because
did
like
not deviate.
a
He told
kid
the same
doesn't.
story, and he kept referring
Yeah,
to this thing as the giant.
yeah.
The giant helped me.
The thing about kids is that they don't really go, especially for something like this, they don't go out of their way to lie because like he knows like maybe that's not entirely true, but you know what I'm saying is that
No,
like
no, absolutely. I
yeah,
do know what you're saying,
yeah,
and I understand it. To clarify, it wasn't 4 miles; it was 2 to 4, so it was somewhere in between there.
okay,
Still a great
that's
distance
still for a
in
2-year-old.
fucking swamp. And
Yeah,
they say that for the record, this isn't like swamp where it's just mud and you kind of get stuck. It's water.
yeah,
It reminds me a lot. The pictures of the area reminds me a lot of Boggy Creek, that
yeah,
type of swamp.
yeah,
Now, this is also. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think I have. Yeah, here's the original newspaper of the thing, the reporting of them finding the toddler. It's Virginia Chronicle. This happened in Virginia.
okay,
It was on page 10. Yeah, missing toddler found unharmed.
yeah,
That was the first. That's how Dave Paulides, I think, found it
yeah,
because he was looking for nature trails around Virginia, and he heard of the story. But I mean, just this is more proof of it happened. Here's the news clipping.
yeah, yeah,
And again,
yeah,
this was in 1950. There's even look here. Outlook for jobs better than 1949.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
See, but yeah, the giant.
yeah,
And the thing is, what the fuck was he talking about when he says creatures were trying to get him, but the giant stopped them? He says, well, hold on, I have the verbiage here.
yeah,
Let's see, 2-year-old speaks gibberish, blah 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 blah. All the creatures were around him, but couldn't get to Jackie because the giant was next to him.
yeah. It's almost as if whatever the creatures were surrounding him was like there was an intimidation factor of this giant, which naturally makes sense. Like,
Well, to me, it sounds almost like the kid is describing predators.
yeah, that's kind of what I
That these
was thinking of.
predators were trying to eat
Yeah,
him because he's a
yeah,
fucking defenseless little kid out in the middle of the woods.
yeah. It's free meal. Like
But
it's
this giant that the kid is referring to protected him.
yeah,
And allegedly, at least if you go by what the police were saying, that he had to have helped, carried him to that island and plopped him down there. And you see, to me, what adds believability to this is that is in full. That's an ape.
yeah.
Apes
I,
go out of their way to protect children. They do. They will go
yeah,
out of the way if they see a children walking in the woods, particularly gorillas.
yeah.
Gorillas will go out of the way and protect that kid.
I mean, yeah, that's like, and
Everyone
I'm
makes
not even,
jokes about Harambe,
that's
but
exactly
I
what I'm gonna
mean,
say. Exactly what I'm not even trying to make a joke out of that. That's what happened
yeah.
when the kid fell in. He was keeping him safe, honestly. Like,
Well, he was trying to. Yeah, but
trying
gorillas
to.
will do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's quite possible that this giant, we don't know if it was male or female, or was it a girl or a boy?
Yeah.
And because he only called it the giant, and if it was a girl, it would keep in line with it watching the kids.
Yeah, it. From what we've accepted as ideals of Bigfoot, of Sasquatch, it makes sense. It does kind of make sense.
Everything lines up. It's like, shit, that fucking lines up. But of course, the thing that bothers me about the missing 411, and this is what I was going to talk about, and this is what I wanted to end, tonight's show with.
Okay.
My issue with with missing 411 is that 90% of the stories in the missing 411, for the record, they're all real. Yeah. All of them are real missing people. You can find information about them through newspapers and everything like that. They're all missing people, so that's not the issue. My issue is that it seems like Dave Paulides refuses to take into consideration the extraordinary measures the human body can go through.
Okay.
And it's almost like he also refuses suicide. And what I mean by that is he'll describe people that just sort of wander off by themselves and then just disappear.
Yeah.
And he'll mention that a lot of the family members the guy wasn't sad, the guy didn't show any signs of being suicidal or anything, and I'm like, that's because
it's denial.
Or
they don't know
that.
Yeah.
People who really, and I firmly subscribe to this.
Yeah.
People who really want to kill themselves won't make a big spectacle about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're totally. I agree with you on that.
And 90% of the stories in these books, I'm not saying are suicide. 90% of these stories in the books, it's like he fails to take into consideration the extraordinary things the human body can do if being pumped full of adrenaline, or if the mentality is, I'm going to die if I don't do this.
Yeah, yeah.
The amount of strain that we can go through to try to save ourselves is astonishing. And so a lot of these stories of where they find these people miles upon, particularly kids, miles and miles and miles away from, not so much in this story because of the swamp, but there's several of them where kids were found like on top of mountains, and how the fuck did they get up there? Look, a kid, what the human body can do, especially if it's scared, is astonishing.
Yeah.
Yes, is it improbable that the person could have made it all the way up this mountain and died? Yeah. Is it impossible? No.
Yeah. And
that's what I think Dave Paulides fails at doing. Because this is a common thing that you find in all of his books, by the way, is a failure to even consider suicide. I just want to disappear. And the other one is just that. It's almost like he doesn't consider the extraordinary lengths the human body will do in order to try to survive. And that's always irked me. That has literally always irked me, because and it's like 90% of the stories I can be like, no, it's improbable, but it's possible.
Yeah.
That being said, 10% of them, holy fuck.
Yeah.
And this was one of the 10%.
Yeah.
Which FYI, even in this story, I'm like, there's things in it that I can go, okay, that's a little weird. And I mentioned one of them earlier, the kid thinking that he saw something pop and stuff like that. The other one, too, that I even question is, I believe a kid could do what, unlike what everyone says, I believe a kid could have possibly trekked through the woods and done that.
Okay.
I do believe a kid could have done that, especially if the kid is being pumped full of adrenaline or doesn't know where he's going. Just sort of stumbling about. But yeah, that was a few of the things. Those are my two big issues with the Missing 411.
Yeah.
That being said, great series.
Yeah.
Everything I've heard from it is great. I love the fact that Dave Paulides is doing this. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one was great. This one that you shared now was great. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorites. If you guys want to hear a more detailed version of it, then don't want to get the book. Mr. Ballin, who's a great YouTuber. I love his YouTube stuff. He's great at storytelling. Did a video on it, and that's the second place where I heard it. I first read about it in the Missing 411. But yeah, I chose that just because I think that was a very plausible story. That could have been something. There's a lot of stuff in that that adds up, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ariel, you said a lot of people sometimes don't realize what the human body can live through. And I'm like, yeah. we are pretty... A lot of people make fun of us because we're pink fleshy things, but I gotta tell you, we can endure a shit ton.
Yeah,
we can endure a shit ton.